What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on the
Welcome to LivePrayer.
It's waiting there for you.
Here's your
And welcome to LivePrayer. I am Bill Keller. Good to be with you on this Thursday evening. Pray it was a wonderful day for you today, and it's good to be back with you. If you are new to the program, you are watching LivePrayer. We come to you live and in living color every Monday through Friday, 11 to midnight Eastern Daylight Time, wherever you may be across this great land of ours. Sea to shining sea, border to what is now an obliterated border. Thank you for tuning in. Our friends in other far-off great lands, I want to welcome you as well. Once again, I'm Bill Keller, founder of LivePrayer.com. We're the world's largest interactive Christian website, reach a little over 2.5 million folks each and every day via the internet. Please check us out online. Web address on your screen, LivePrayer.com, LivePrayer.com. By the way, let me just say a quick thank you. A lot of the people that watch this program have been led by God to support the ministry with not just your prayers, but as you're able with some of your treasure. I just want to say thank you very much. It's a blessing, because what you sow into this ministry is literally being sowed into the lives of the lost and the hurting all over this world each and every day. And after over 22 years online, nearly 19 years on TV, we continue to push ahead with God's agenda, not man's agenda, God's agenda. And now more than ever, this voice that he's given to us, this platform he's blessed us with, is more necessary than ever. You know, I got to tell you real quick, I don't want to take up too much time because we got a lot of content to get to tonight, but right before I was going on, I was checking a couple things on my personal email. Dear friend of the ministry, I've been praying for the last 2 weeks. Elderly gentleman, definitely in the danger demographic. He'd been fighting, well, he was, like most people, had some other medical issues, but he was infected with the Chinese flu a few weeks ago and sadly passed away tonight. The good news is he is forever with the Lord. Yet the very next email after that, another young man that had actually been on a ventilator. And see, this is why I keep trying to impress upon you. The second you feel any symptoms, get tested. Please, that's the one thing. You've got to, they can talk about vaccines all day. The test, as far as and we know that false positives, all that, but if you even think for a second you might be infected, get tested. And if the test is positive, immediately get your doctor to start treating you with some of these therapeutics that have been proven to be very effective, especially early on. By far the number one most effective therapeutic is the monoclonal antibodies. Then you've got, obviously, you can take the hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin cocktail. That's been very effective. Ivermectin has been very effective. I mean, there are therapeutics that have been very effective out there, especially if you're not in the danger demographic. They're even that much more effective, because once it progresses to a point where it's in your lungs, and if they have to put you on a ventilator, it's very, very, but one of our friends was on a ventilator, passed away this evening. Another one actually was on a ventilator, but he's home now. Got a little bit of a recovery to go, but he's at least out of that danger area, out of the hospital, back home. So, again, after, with if you knew the program, every morning I write a daily devotional. It's a single topic each morning, usually about a 3 to 5 minute read. Goes right now to a little over 2.5 million folks all over the world by email every night. Deals, again, and from that, though, we get about 40,000 emails every day. And out of those emails we get every day, we have a team of over 700 retired pastors that actually pray over those emails and respond to each one. So in these last 21 months, we've dealt with literally tens and tens of thousands of people that have been dealing with this. So we're coming from a place probably of a lot more understanding and with a lot more information than I would say, well, definitely as much as anybody out there. And matter of fact, I've got a whole string of COVID stuff I want to start tonight with. So let's have a word of prayer and let's get started because we've got a lot to get to tonight. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for blessing us to be able to gather together tonight in your name. I pray tonight for our dear friends who are part of this audience tonight, those with me right now as we're live, those who will be watching in the hours, days, and weeks and months to come, that you bless them and their families and meet their every need. Stand in the gap tonight for all those who are fighting with this scourge that China unleashed on the world. And pray, God, that you will heal bodies. We're thankful for this wonderful day that you've given to us. We're thankful for the blessings we've enjoyed. And now, Lord, I ask that you open our hearts and minds to receive from you tonight. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. All right, let's get started here. Like I said, let me just start on the Chinese flu stuff because I've got a bunch of things here tonight that let me just string it all out. The Democrats actually voted to block testing illegals. In other words, a bunch of Republicans in the House were putting forth a bill that basically required our Border Patrol, our immigration people to test these illegals that are coming to this country. Democrats blocked it. Why would they do that? You want to mandate United States citizens to be vaccinated, and you don't even want to test illegals? As long as we're talking about that, if you haven't heard, we've got anywhere from 60 to 80,000 people. I mean, it's like an invading army that are heading to our border as I speak. Once again, don't ever forget this. This is all on purpose. We had 93,000 people die last year of drug overdoses. Now, a good portion of those, fentanyl was involved. And don't forget what I've been trying to help you understand. If fentanyl is involved, it's really not a drug overdose. It's a poison. It's a poisoning. You know, there used to be a day when kids could go to college and end up at some party and maybe experiment trying cocaine for the first time or heroin for the first time, and it was what it was. You don't have that luxury anymore. And real quickly, just so you understand, fentanyl is very cheap. And what happens is these drug dealers, these street dealers, they literally lace cocaine with a little bit of fentanyl, heroin with a little bit of fentanyl, methamphetamines with a little bit of fentanyl. And the purpose for that is it gives them a really quick, hard high. It just makes the whatever euphoric feeling you get from the cocaine or the meth, it just makes it that much more of a feeling. The problem you've got is fentanyl is what people go to medical school to learn how to safely put people under for surgery, the anesthesiologist. That's basically what they use, fentanyl. You're talking about people that have medical degrees. Yet you've got drug dealers that are probably high school dropouts mixing street drugs with this stuff. It's no wonder you've got people, they still call it OD, but if fentanyl's involved, it's not really an overdose. It's a poisoning. And it's all coming from China. And it's all coming through the southern border. I was watching something the other day, Idaho of all places. They've got a roaring drug problem in Idaho. And the sheriff was talking about the fact that, number one, it's because of the border. But number two, it's also so plentiful now, and it's so cheap. And what's President Biden doing? Nothing. I told you he's the best friend the drug cartels ever had. And it's not this whole border issue. It's about so many things. It's not just about illegals coming to this country. It's not about taking jobs. It's not just about the crime and all that. It's about the fact that we have our citizens being killed by this policy. And nobody wants to talk about it. This doesn't have to be happening. Listen. Even if the borders were shut down as tight as they were the last year of the Trump presidency, you're still getting fentanyl in this country. You're still going to have people dying of both overdoses and fentanyl poisoning. But not in these numbers. At least try. And here's another thing. Stop comparing the vaccination for the Chinese flu with the polio vaccine or the measles vaccine. Well, your kids get vaccinated for all kinds of things before they go to school. Yeah, you're talking about vaccines that have been around 50, 60, 70 years. They have a track record. They're proven. And they're designed to actually prevent the disease. That's another thing. The Chinese flu vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting it. That's obvious now. At best, it gives you some antibodies so you can fight it, so maybe you don't end up in the hospital. You don't have symptoms so bad. You don't die from it. But it's certainly not designed. It's certainly not designed to prevent it. It's just not. And anybody that tells you it is lying to you. So, that's the argument here out there. Well, you get your kids vaccinated for the measles. Yeah, well, that's because we've had a measles vaccine for 60 years. And we know the history of what that vaccine does. Oh, we're going to get in a little bit about what this one does too. The Senate is now starting to push legislation to mandate vaccine proof of vaccination before you can get on a plane and fly commercially. Just letting you know, I told you a long time ago that day was coming, and it's a lot closer than anybody thinks. By the way, I saw another interesting statistic today out of a bunch of different hospitals. They're saying anywhere from 70 to 80% of the people being hospitalized right now with the Chinese flu are people who've been vaccinated. But they don't tell you that on CNN or MSNBC. No. Joe Biden doesn't tell you that. No. They all want to tell you it's the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Yeah, well, if it's the pandemic of the unvaccinated, how come 70, in some places 80% of the hospital beds are being filled up with people who have been vaccinated? Speaking of that, there's a black gentleman, very articulate, very liberal, don't agree with much of what he pushes. He's on CNN quite frequently. He's been around for many years. His name's Mark Lamont Hill. I think he was a college professor too at some point. Again, very, very well spoken. He's not a bomb thrower, okay? And he's still very liberal, very progressive. Pushes that agenda, but he does it in a little more of a measured way than most. 42 years old. Just the other day, he was ripping NBA players who wouldn't get vaccinated. Well, it turns out he's in the hospital. had a heart attack, and it turns out his lungs were full of blood clots. By the grace of God, it looks like the doctors have been able to get rid of most of the clots, and it looks like he's going to be heading home. Okay? Oh, did I tell you? He's fully vaccinated with the booster, the whole 9 yards. But see, they don't want to tell you about that. They don't want to tell you about the people who die after being vaccinated. They don't want to tell you about the people who, and I get it, it's a small percentage. I'm not arguing that. It is. It's a small percentage who get vaccinated, die, happens, small percentage, vaccinated and have horrible side effects. I told you about the Nigerian woman that immigrated here, was here on a green card, came did all of it correctly, her and her family, working in a clinic in Minneapolis, Minnesota, had to be vaccinated. She got vaccinated, and within 24 hours, she had her legs amputated and her hands amputated. Of course, from a Christian perspective, these tyrannical countries around the country, including tyrannical states in our country, one of the first things they've done is lock down churches. Churches in Australia, I mean, they are shuttered. They are padlocked. Now, they don't have a First Amendment constitutional right to worship like we do. Not that that made much of a difference for a good 6 months to a year, because too many gutless pastors were afraid to challenge it. Yeah, it's like the pastor in Calgary. Canada doesn't have that First Amendment protection to worship like we do either. They shut their churches. He said, no, I'm not shutting my churches. This Arthur Pawlowski up in Canada. And he's been thrown in jail 3 or 4 times, looking at 5 years in jail for breaking Canada's health laws by having church. But it's happened in Australia, it's happened in Canada, it's happened in Europe. Sadly, we've still got 40-some% of our churches still shut down. The CDC apparently called a woman, I guess it was supposedly on a survey about the vaccine. And the woman said, well, why are you calling me? She says, well, you haven't been vaccinated. And the woman says, well, how do you know that? And then the woman who was calling from the CDC spent the next 5-10 minutes trying to bully her into getting vaccinated. But the critical point of this that I want you to understand is, number one, how the CDC know this woman wasn't vaccinated? I've always told you their dream is to get that, this database of who's vaccinated, who's not. They're really pushing for that. Oh, by the way, one of the bad problems that many people are experiencing, especially young men. This tends to be a problem with young men. It's called myocarditis. It's an inflammation of the heart. And for whatever reason, this seems to be a bad side effect for healthy young men. I'm talking about young men way outside the danger demographic, no pre-existing medical issues whatsoever, get vaccinated. The next thing you know, they're in the hospital with this myocarditis, which is a heart inflammation. And again, that seems to be a lot more common problem than a lot of people understand with young men. Again, and all I'm saying is, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people should have the ability to pray, consult with their doctor, and make this choice for themselves. You know, the mantra from the abortion world for all these years is, well, that's between a woman and her doctor. Now, that lie, the problem with that logic is because it's really not just about the woman and her doctor. It's about the woman and her doctor and another human being, okay? You don't have that here. This is just a human being and the doctor. That's all it is. A human being and the doctor. They're the ones that are making this decision. And It's just amazing how they want to use that argument and but they don't want to hear it in this case. Now, one last thing, and then I'll get off. I can get out of this whole Chinese flu issue. Army flight supervisor sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense that they should ground all vaccinated military pilots, not unvaccinated, ground all vaccinated military pilots for fear of the pilot having a cardiac arrest. Here we go back to this heart issue with healthy young men. So this is what's out there. And this is the stuff that you're not going to, right now, I mean, people are being censored right and left for daring to tell people the full story. You've got the propagandists masquerading as the media, the corporate media, shills for the big pharma. And I told you about that, right? You go, I know it's painful. Go watch CNN for 30 minutes or MSNBC for 30 minutes. You can turn the sound down to save yourself the grief. But you're going to have probably 5 commercials in that 30 minutes, okay? Maybe 6. Count how many of those commercials are pharmaceutical commercials. You're going to find probably about 2/3 are pharmaceutical commercials. Big business for these places. Now our economy. Oh boy. Oh, I have been actually a little amused especially the last few days. Emails coming in from people that never even heard of Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, or Kirsten Sinema, the senator from Arizona. And unless you're kind of a little bit of a political junkie, you probably wouldn't know who they are unless you live in their state. But boy, does everybody know these people now. And I went back to my notes. It was a year ago, long before the November election. I was telling you, I was kind of game planning. Well, if God allows Joe Biden to become president, and God allows the Democrats to control the Senate and the House, I said, they could literally transform this country if they get rid of the filibuster, right? And I've been begging you to pray about the filibuster, praying for Manchin and Sinema, right? To the point I know a lot of people don't even want to hear it anymore, but maybe now you're starting to understand why this is so important. Oh, by the way, if you want to see how important those two people are, again, if you watch CNN, MSNBC, or any of the mainstream news stations, they're almost as disgusted with Sinema and Manchin as they are Donald Trump. And I know that's a stretch. And I'll tell you the reason. They're like so close to their socialist utopia. They're so close to their progressive fantasies all coming true. If just Manchin, Sinema will fall into line, we can get rid of the filibuster, we can take your guns away, we can have an abortion on every street corner, we'll have electric cars flying through the air. We will become a globalist utopia. And they're so close. As a matter of fact, the thing that has got these hacks that masquerade as news people so twisted is that Sinema and Manchin are Democrats. They're not Republicans. And it's 2 Democrats that are stopping this grandiose vision of destroying the country to come to pass. If it wasn't so serious, it's almost comical. And listen, when you watch these people like Maddow or Cuomo or any of these people, you always know what's important to them because you take away all their commercials. They don't do an hour like I do an hour. Okay, they've got commercials, so their hour is really about 38 minutes, just so you know. That the way they cut the hour up. You got about 22 minutes of commercial in every hour, okay? LivePrayer is commercial free. But so they've got 38 precious minutes, so they can only talk about so much, so they have to prioritize. So what they're talking about is really the top of their priority list, right? They're in total meltdown. All their liberal fairy tales are so close they can taste it. But Manchin and cinema won't do the right thing. Oh, they're just livid. They're just livid. And it's not just the news people. The Democrats are just, the Democrats. I mean, they are speaking with absolute disgust when they say Manchin's name or cinema's name. So all I can tell you, my friends, is please keep praying for these two people. I can't even begin to describe how critical this is. I really can't. If you're paying attention a little bit, you might start really understanding just how precarious this whole thing is. Really. Speaking of Congress, the Republicans have always been a party. Let me tell you why Donald Trump was so successful. Other than Ronald Reagan, and he never fought on the level Trump did, but we've never had a real fighter, a real, somebody that would go all in, like the Democrats do, all right? The Republicans have historically been a party that would seize defeat from the jaws of victory. It'd be like a football team. There's only 3 minutes left in the game, and they're winning by 3 points, and they got the ball. And it's like for some reason they just hand the ball to the defense and let the defense take the ball down the field and score a touchdown and win at the end of the game. That's what the Republicans are like. Today, right now, as we go off the air tonight, midnight Eastern time, the government was going to shut down. And the Democrats didn't have enough votes to stop it. So what happened today? Well, you had 15 senators, Republican senators, and 34 Republican House members voted with the Democrats to keep the government open until December 3rd. Unbelievable. But Bill, the government was shut. Listen, the government will work more effectively and more efficiently if they shut down and dismiss all the fear mongering. Well, Social Security checks won't go up. That's a lie. They go out no matter what. Government workers that have to be furloughed because it's shut down, right? They get all their pay when they open pay. They'll open it back up at some point. When it does, they get all their back pay. Well, the military doesn't get paid. Wrong. Like Social Security, the military keeps getting paid. Those are all lies. All lies. The Republicans, all they had to do was stay home today. And the government would be shut down. And why was that important? Because now it starts putting the pressure on the Democrats to start figuring out how to govern and stop looking at these fairy tale trillions and trillions and trillions of spending. In other words, they'd have to go back to the basics and worry about operating the country. But no, 15 idiot Republicans in the Senate, including Leader McConnell, by the way, and 34 idiot Republicans in the House voted with the Democrats to keep the government open for another 60 days till December 3rd. Now, we've still got 3 very important things hanging in the balance. One is raising the debt ceiling. Supposedly, no Republicans are going to go for that, and God help them if they do, because without Republican help, the Democrats cannot raise the debt ceiling. Without raising the debt ceiling, all this other stuff is a moot point. Because the only way they can actually push through some of these other things, these trillions and trillions and trillions, they got to get the debt ceiling raised. And once again, you're going to hear all the lies. Well, the full faith and credit of the United States will be damaged. It'll be it's an economic disaster now. Just talked to a dear friend who's in the building business, and he was telling me, and he gets, he builds apartment complexes and housing, housing communities, and he's got materials and stuff come from all over the world. He said it's an absolute nightmare. The supply chains are so broken. He said it's down to even the basics. They don't have enough petrol in Europe to even move stuff. And we discussed last night at the beginning of the program. If you missed that, you need to go back and watch it. The incredible problems we've got in this country and world right now with all these supply chain issues. So the debt ceiling needs to be raised, I think, sometime in October. If the Republicans will just shut up, sit down, and leave the Democrats alone and don't vote with them, it's not going to get raised. And then, of course, you got the $1.2 trillion, what they call infrastructure package, of which less than 20% is real. Roads, everybody agrees, roads, bridges, and airports, and that's 20% of the bill's that. What's the other 80%? Liberal garbage. Liberal garbage. And that's only the beginning. That's why then they come behind that with the $3.5 trillion. What do they call that? The human infrastructure. What a joke. The Build Back Better plan. Yeah. The Build Back Destroy plan, which is also not 3.5 trillion, it's more like 5 trillion. But don't worry, Nancy and Biden tell you it's going to cost zero. Oh, that's another thing. Did you notice, if you saw the clip of Biden lying to people and telling you that, insulting your intelligence, that they're going to spend $3.5 trillion and it's not going to cost anything? It's paid for. It's going to cost zero. If you watch that clip, he did this with his hand, zero. Nancy did the same thing, zero. I'll tell you what, the FBI better investigate these people, because we've been told if you make that sign with your hand, that OK sign, that circle K with your hand, that means you're a white supremacist. Remember that? Whenever they saw people like holding that up, sometimes Trump, he's big with the hand gestures, and sometimes, there it is. They freeze frame up there. That's that That's that white nationalist sign. He's given a sign to his people, his white nationalist people. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. So if these idiot Republicans will just stay away. There's an old saying, when your opponent is, digging and digging and digging, get out of his way. Let him keep digging. Don't help him. That's what the idiot Republicans did today. 15 senators, 34 House members. This country the government would be shut down in about 30 minutes if they had just done nothing. Like I said, they snatch victory, or they just snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. Oh, just so you know, the CDC, these geniuses that have absolutely been such bastions of great information and the strength of our country during this whole pandemic, being facetious, of course. Walensky, the head of the CDC, she's out with this big expose how guns are a national health crisis. Guns are a national health crisis. Don't forget, if they ever got rid of that Senate filibuster, you could kiss the Second Amendment goodbye. Dollar Tree. Did you hear about the Dollar Tree? It's no longer the Dollar Tree. Number one, I've always been fairly, saddened that Dollar Tree is so prevalent in our country. I mean, I don't think that's God bless the Dollar Tree, and they're all over the country. And I know for some people that's, where they have to shop. I just think it's a sad commentary of country that one of our leading retailers is not just called the Dollar Tree, it is the Dollar Tree. It's not called the Dollar Tree for nothing. It's called the Dollar Tree because you can actually go there and get things for $1. Well, Biden has got this economy so screwed up now in 8 months. Well, not Biden. Joe Biden doesn't even know what day it is. Obama's got this economy so screwed up in these first 8 months now. The Dollar Tree isn't the Dollar Tree anymore. Now it's the $1.25 tree. Or it could be the $1.50 tree. They say, well, it's going to be between $1.25 and $1.50. Inflation, cost of getting goods to the shelves, just what we're talking about. I mean, that's how screwed up our economy is. Even the Dollar Tree isn't the Dollar Tree anymore. Oh, the NBA I mentioned last night, in certain cities, if you're not vaccinated, cities like New York, San Francisco, some other NBA towns, if you're a player and you're not vaxxed, you can't play. You can't play. And the NBA came out with a edict yesterday. If you're not playing because of a COVID situation, you're not getting paid for that game either. You not only can't play, you're not getting paid for that game. Now, as you know, the NBA has always been one of those woke organizations, right? But see, this is what happens. This is what happens. As long as you toe the line, you're okay. But if you get out of line, even if you're on that same team, if you're part of the team, they're going to get you. Look what they did to Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj is no conservative, okay? She's a lewd, crude, really nasty woman whose quote-unquote music is raw sewage. She's part of the whole Black Lives Matter and that whole leftist movement. But she got out of line. She said something she shouldn't have said, like, you should just pray about getting the vaccine. They slapped her down so fast, just like they're slapping down these NBA players. Oh, I'll tell you what, this one NBA player, I love this guy. Isaac plays for the Orlando Magic. And a reporter was asking, because he's one of these that has chosen not to be vaccinated. Matter of fact, he said, listen, I've already been infected with the Chinese flu. I recovered. I've got more natural antibodies than 10 vaccines. Why do I have to get vaccinated? I'm already covered. And some reporter was trying to pin him down or something about how he should get vaccinated so he doesn't infect his teammates. And this kid was quick. And again, he's no Trump-loving, Republican. He's just a, smart young man. He looked at the report. He said, if by me being unvaccinated is going to infect somebody who's been vaccinated, what is the use of getting the vaccine to begin with then? The whole purpose of the vaccine is so you don't get infected. Silence. Oh, did you hear about the latest thing from Amazon? Oh, if you've been watching this program for a while, you know, what, maybe 10 years ago? I think 10 years ago is when the first, I guess what they call smart TVs came out that were hooked to the internet and all that. I started warning people there. I said, do not hook your TV up to the internet. And if you need to watch something, whatever, make sure you disconnect it. Because if it's hooked to the internet, it's hackable. And then, of course, you came out with what? Alexa and all those quote-unquote home assistants. Then they had the Ring doorbells, and now they got your thermostat. They got everything connected to the internet. Anything connected to the internet is hackable. And I've shared with you over the years the incredible invasion of privacy that people with Alexa and things like that have. I mean, people can literally hear you. Well, Amazon's got this new deal out. It's $1,000, okay? And it's a home robot. A home robot. And apparently it follows you around and does things for you. Do you remember the Jetsons, if you're old enough? You had George Jetson, his boy Elroy, his wife, Rosie, the maid, right? And the dog's name was what? Astro. Remember Astro, the dog? Well, that's the name of Amazon's home robot. It's called Astro. It's $1,000. It follows you around. I don't know what it does. Guess it gets you a beer if you want a beer, or get you an apple if you need an apple. I don't know. Goes get your newspaper. You got to be out of your mind if you have one of those things in your house. And I know the retort, well, I don't do anything wrong, and these are conveniences, and I'm not worried of what people hear. Say, okay, fine, I got it. And again, old guys like me, 10, 20 years, my generation will be gone, and you won't have to hear about these concerns that people of my age have. And it's funny, the people that love these things used to have these same concerns too. Things like privacy, right? Oh, another reason you better pray none of these trillion dollar things go through is that every one of them, the way they're going to supposedly pay for them, which they're not, but what dent they do make in it is going to be by what? Taxing the living daylights out of you. Taxing the living daylights, raising the corporate rate. Oh, if you don't make $400,000, don't worry, you're taxed. That's a lie. That's a lie. And I love how stupid they think people are. 3.5 trillion. No. That's zero. It's zero. You know what that's like? That's like, I want to buy a $4 million house. Okay? But currently, I've got about $1 million in debt. I'm probably going in the whole $20,000 a month just on living expenses, right? And people would look at that and they'd say, well, you got no business buying a $4 million house. I say, but it's going to cost me zero. And then they look at you like you're an idiot. Well, that's insanity. What they don't understand is the way I'm going to buy my $4 million house is I'm going to steal $40,000 from 100 of my neighbors. Now, some of my neighbors, they've done pretty well. They probably won't miss the $40,000. Most of my neighbors, though, that $40,000 I steal from them is gonna hurt. That's exactly what the government's doing. They're saying, oh, 3.5 trillion, but it's going to cost zero. Well, the only reason it's going to cost zero, and that's a lie too, but whatever amount it does, they are able to pay for, it's going to be because they're stealing money from you and me. And yes, I said stealing. And I'm not one of these tax deniers, one of these, what they call the tax scofflaw guys. I know there's people out there, well, the tax isn't in the Constitution, the tax isn't in it, it's illegal. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. Ask Wesley Snipes how that worked out for him. But that's how they're going to do it. Whatever money they are going to come up with towards their fairy tale spending, it's going to be by stealing it from you and me and other hardworking people. China is actually going to start cutting power in a lot of parts of China. China's got some financial problems. Oh, and let me tell you what they may be willing to do to fix their financial problems. And if you've been watching the program, you probably know where I'm going with this. They've always believed that Taiwan belonged to China. They never, ever admitted that Taiwan's a separate country, all their own, right? So the reason Taiwan has been so successful is that they've literally become the Silicon Valley of the Far East. They're the number one producer of computer chips. So China's got some real financial problems right now. They really do. And China's also got a long-term situation where they believe Taiwan belongs to them. You've got a weak and feckless avatar president and military right now in the United States. I would not be sleeping well if I was living in Taiwan right now. I'm just saying it. Because I could see China going in militarily, taking over Taiwan, which they would then take over all their computer chip factories and all the... We got car plants here in the United States. They're having to shut down for 3-month stretches. They can't get the computer chips they need to finish making the cars. China has a huge incentive on a lot of different fronts to go after Taiwan. And, again, we talked last night about all the supply chain issues. You got car plants right now. They're shutting down, having to furlough off workers for 90 days or whatever, because they don't have the computer chips they need to finish the cars. I mentioned last night, if you had an accident or something like that, some people, instead of 2 days in the repair shop, they might be waiting 2 weeks, 2 months, because they can't get the parts. Something popped up yesterday. It was no big deal in the scheme of things, but it is a big deal to me. It should be a big deal to a lot of people. If you saw the other day, Joe Biden got his booster shot, and he was sitting in front of a window that was overlooking the Rose Garden. The problem was he wasn't sitting in front of a window overlooking the Rose Garden. He was on it was like a TV set. It was a fake window. Now, he's the real president. He can sit by a window overlooking the real Rose Garden, but apparently they've got this somewhere in the office building attached to the White House. I guess he does some Zoom calls from there. And again, if you were just looking, he says, oh, there's Joe in the Oval Office overlooking the Rose Garden. No, he wasn't in the Oval. He was on a set, like a movie set. That wasn't a real window. That wasn't the Rose Garden. And I got to be honest with you, I've been bothered by this for, the last 24 hours. Like, why would you be doing that? I mean, not one thing this guy does is legitimate. I mean, it's bizarre to some extent. Again, he can do things anywhere in the White House. I mean, the White House is a big, big building. But then there's some attached, office buildings to it. And apparently one of these attached office buildings, not the White House proper, they've got like this Oval Office set up. Where if you look at it on TV, you'd think he's in the Oval Office. He's not. Very, very bizarre. Very, very bizarre. Let me finish with this real quick. I want to get this in before we get out of here tonight. The Marines are investigating a Lance Corporal who rescued a baby in Afghanistan. If you saw the news coverage, there is this iconic photo and video of an Afghani mother literally throwing her baby over the barbed wire into the airport compound where there was a Marine standing there to actually receive the baby. In other words, the mother said, listen, I'm not getting out of here, but I want my baby out of here. Well, it turns out that this Marine, this Lance Corporal, lives in Georgia. And last Saturday night, Donald Trump had one of his rallies in Georgia, and that Marine was there. Well, he was in civilian clothes, off hours. President Trump introduced him. He came up, said a couple words, and how thankful he was that he was able to be there and be part of that. And he might have been up there 20 seconds. Apparently now there's a Marine investigation into this guy regarding his participating in a Trump political rally. You've got to be kidding me. With all the problems we've got in this country, with all the issues we have in the military, they're actually investigating this guy because he attended a Trump rally? He's white, of course. If I had to bet money, he's probably a Christian too. There you go. Target demographic. And then you've got this 17-year-old Marine. I don't know his rank, but he apparently he's a solid guy. Worked his way through the ranks. 17 years, 5 or 6 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. About 3 weeks ago, he got on YouTube and basically condemned and castigated the military leadership for not being accountable for the debacle that took place in Afghanistan. Now, he's not stupid. He's an officer. He said, listen, I know by doing this, I'm going to lose my commission. He said, I'm probably going to lose my pension, my benefits. But he said, I can't be silent. Well, sure enough, within a couple of days, stripped of his command, stripped of his benefits. Only Monday, right before the Secretary of Defense Austin and Mealy, the guy from CENTCOM, before they went on TV in front of the Senate and House on Wednesday, they picked this guy up and put him in the brig. Fort Leavenworth, the brig, the jail. And there are some military codes of ethics and military rules about speaking out against senior officers. There is. Okay? And he knew by doing that he was going to be stripped of his command, and he was. He was going to probably lose all of his benefits. 17 years of his life and his basically putting his life on the line for his country down the drain as far as his personal benefits go. And he was right, they took those away. But that wasn't enough. Now they've got him in the brig. We'll see what happens. All right, I got to get out of here, running late. If you've never made a decision for Jesus, I'm going to give you a chance to do that right now. When this brief journey is over, the only thing that matters is, do you know Jesus? And if you've never made that decision, I want to give you a chance to do that right now. And if you want to make that commitment, pray with me, dude. Dear Lord, tonight, I come to you, asking you to forgive me my sins. I confess tonight, Lord, I'm a sinner. I ask your forgiveness. I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth, Jesus is my Lord, my Savior. I give my life to you tonight. Use me for your glory, now and forever. In Jesus' name I pray. And my friend, if you prayed and you meant it, the Bible says you're saved, not because you uttered a few words. They're just a verbal guide for what you're doing in your heart by faith. If you made that commitment, I got a book I'll send you. It won't cost you anything. Drop me an email, bkeller@liveprayer.com. If I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to email me, bkeller@liveprayer.com. Love and care about you so much. Have a great night tonight. Get a wonderful night's sleep. Have a blessed day tomorrow. Lord willing, we'll be back here 11 o'clock tomorrow night Eastern to finish out the week. God
What
bless you.
problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on.
Welcome.